The thoughts, views, and comments expressed by Sidebar, its guests, callers, and advisors are not necessarily those of the management, ownership, or production unit of ILS Verizon Media Group. Sidebar, a 103.5 The Beat podcast, is a production of ILTV Studios and may not be reproduced or represented, in part or in its entirety, without the express written consent of Verizon Media Group. Sidebar is the intellectual property of Verizon Media Group. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved.
Welcome to Sidebar, 103 The Beat podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. Hope you guys are doing good today. So, there are times that people, it's not often, but occasionally people will ask me questions and I don't know if I necessarily have the answer in that moment. But I have some of the questions that have been asked of me, I'm going to say recently and just generally over the time. And it's like, this would be a perfect time, a perfect opportunity to answer some of the, I'm going to say viewers, but I know some of you are listening on the radio, some to your chagrin and others to your delight. But let's take a look at some of these questions. All right, so 1 second, I have to unfold the paper. The first question is, sometimes I feel like you don't really think we is number one. Great question. Well, it's not really a question, it's a statement. Sometimes you feel like I don't think that we're number one. In which regard, though? And I mean, before I get to the point of whether or not I think that we are number one. Well, what do you mean by number one? I feel like that's a thought to say, I don't think that Bahamians are the best. And that could be because oftentimes it seems as though I am critical. And here's the thing. And I may skew a tad religious inside this entire episode, but you know when the Bible says the Father chasteneth who he loves, like basically you discipline the ones that you care about. It's like that. Like if I don't care about you, I don't care about you. You're not going to tell somebody that you wish death upon to, hey, drive carefully or slow down or don't drink and drive. No, you don't care about them. So you're like, just make sure don't hit nobody. But beyond that, you don't really care about their well-being and their safety. And so you aren't as critical of them because they don't occupy enough space inside your mind to even worry if they're going to crash into a wall. So that's the first bit, right? Somebody being critical of you and critical of your behavior doesn't mean that the person doesn't like you. If anything, it means the opposite. Like indifference is what you should be concerned about. When somebody does not care enough to tell you that you're wearing your shoes incorrectly or there's something in your nose, those people don't care about you. So there's that. But now on to the issue of I don't think that we are the best. It's not that I don't think that we are not capable of the best. I think that the best is not static, I think. It's not a standstill thing. You are not the best, full stop, point blank. You can be the best at one thing, at a point in history. But to be the best, it is an ongoing battle and effort that you must constantly strive towards. If you think that being the best is just something that you are born into, then you are probably not the best. If you think it is something that you've arrived at it and that's it, then you are probably not the best. You may have once been the top of the game, but it doesn't mean that you remain there. And if anything, I have a problem with the idea of number one. And the problem I have with the idea of number one is simply that it becomes very easy for us on achieving a certain goal or a certain status to no longer try. And there's two issues with that. It's probably multiple issues, but two issues that come to mind with that. One, if you think that you're the best and you stop trying, then you cease to be the best. You don't perform as well. You don't set goals that are as big. But also, if you think that you are the best, and that is a statement of fact, then you start to think that everybody else who isn't you must be inferior. And so it could be a point where you are actually inferior to somebody else in some regard. But because your mindset is, we are the best, we are number one, we are the greatest little nation on earth, we have the cleanest, clearest waters, we have the friendliest, nicest people, we are the richest in the Caribbean, we are the third richest in the Western Hemisphere, which for some reason still makes us number one inside our own eyes. We have all of these accomplishments and things. Like, we have these Olympic champions who do this, and we live off of these moments, and we say, because we are Bahamian, we are the best, and to live anywhere else would be inferior. But there are places where you don't die if you're poor. And when I say that, I mean, it's not that somebody's coming to your house to shoot you in the head because you're poor. However, in the Bahamas, if you get stage 4 cancer of any sort, we're going to most likely have to have a cookout. We're most likely going to have to sell sauce on the side of the road by John Canoe Beach and hope that enough people turn up so that we can get you the help and the treatment to go and leave the country to go get help. And the problem is, because we are so interbred after generations and generations of somebody daddy going to 5 different islands and reproducing with 5 different people cousins, we've overlapped the genes. So now we have this BRCA gene that's interspersed throughout the entire country, and it's like, oh, this gene here, you know, it's related some way to breast cancer and other sorts of cancers. So we have this health crisis of cancer in our country, but at the same time, we don't have necessarily the infrastructure and the availability to access of healthcare. You shouldn't die if you're poor. That's the short version of it. And there are places that we consider ourselves better than, and we say, well, at least we live in the Bahamas. Everywhere else sucks. But they don't. They don't die, or they don't lack treatment because they don't have enough money for it. All right? And some of those places are places that we end up going to, like Cuba, for any sort of treatment because it's affordable, right? But if we have in our mind that we are the best, point blank, period, full stop, there is no other explanation, there is no more words to be said after that, we are the best. If that is the route in which we take it, then we not only will miss out on opportunities to say, well, let's go to this place where they might not be better than us in this direction, but they have this thing that we need. You're going to miss out on that. But also you miss and you lack the opportunity to see where your own inefficiencies and your own deficiencies can be improved upon. And so I say all that to say, it is not a matter of whether or not I think that we are number one. It is a matter of what damage is that doing to us as a nation to believe that we are superior to all other nations because we've been taught this mythology that the Bahamas is number one. It's the place where God lives, right? It's a mythology. Listen, you know, it's cool to say, but is it the lived reality that the average Bahamian experiences? Is it the lived reality that even you experience? I don't know if that answered the statement. Anyway, let's go on to another question. Struggling with the paper again. Didn't think this through the whole thing. Okay. None of these questions going to be friendly questions, I see. Why do you hate business owners? Does Stephen Hanna hate business owners? I don't think that I hate business owners. I think that, and I can see where someone would think that I hate business owners, but it's not that I hate business owners. I don't. I don't hate business owners. I have a business license. I have two. But, and here's the thing. In the world that we live in, theoretically, practically, however you wish to say it, I'm 100% for, hey, you do a job, you should be fairly compensated for that. Sometimes that looks like you're an employee. Sometimes that looks like this is a trading as, like you are the worker, all right? This is your business. You're a plumber, you're a carpenter, you're a mechanic. You work for yourself. I don't hate business owners. Now, I think the confusion is that people think that business owners are automatically capitalists. I have some issues with capitalists. I think that they may have an easier life than the rest of us and may not, in this present dispensation of how our tax system works, they may not be paying as much and as fair a share as everybody else. I still don't hate them. I don't hate anybody. I love everyone. It is commanded of me by God to love everyone. However, people often conflate capitalists with somebody who has a business and who runs a business. Because even like a small business owner is not necessarily a capitalist, all right? Now, sometimes there's going to be overlap, but when I say capitalist, and when people generally say capitalist, what they're talking about is somebody who the capital that they own, the things that they own, the money that they own, the worth, the valuable thing that they own, makes money for them. They don't actually have to expend labor in order for it to produce more money for them. And so an example would be where, well, the classical example is you have a factory and you have workers within a factory. The workers within the factory, they work, they have labor. The work that they do makes the factory valuable. But the person who owns the factory gets the bulk of the money. He may pay the workers money, right? Say, here's your salary, but it's not enough for them to start their own factory. It's enough for them to keep body and soul together and to get from point A to point B to return to work to make value for him. He's a capitalist. His assets are making money for him without him expending any labor. If you can walk away from your business and the business is still making money for you, then you're a capitalist. If you cannot leave that business unattended without it falling apart and you not having money from the business, then you're not a capitalist. You're just an ordinary person who's working hard in this version of reality where we have to work until we die. It's not the same thing. You know what I mean? And so I don't hate the capitalist. I want the capitalist to see the benefit of him participating in the system fairly and equitably and not trying to squeeze as much value out of the workers that are laboring in the factory for him. I'm thinking of an example of where it may blur a little bit, because sometimes what you have is somebody who, a landlord, they own a piece of property and they rent it out. Now, there are different types of landlords. There are landlords that have to make sure that the building is upkept, make sure that they do X, Y, and Z. They got to paint the house. They got to figure out how to address the plumbing. And so they're actually putting in labor. That's that type of landlord. I don't technically view those persons as capitalists. But if you look around New Providence in particular, there are a lot of landlords where they just collect money. They don't take care of the premises. They don't make sure that the garbage is collected. They don't make sure that the house is painted. That if your pipe breaks out on you, boss, you need to figure that out yourself. They put all the utilities in your name. Like, they're not handling any of the labor. This is all on you. Those people are capitalists, all right? And so I can see where there's some conflicting. But once again, me being critical of you as a Bahamian to another Bahamian, do not receive that as hate. Receive that as, hey, bro, I love you, and I don't want you to burst hell wide open. So don't be an evil capitalist. Do the right thing. Participate in society with the rest of us. Anyway, I see that we are running to the edge, so I'm going to take a break. When we come back, we'll get into more questions. You are watching and listening to Sidebar 103 to B podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sidebar 103 to B podcast powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. Today, out here inside the wonderful, warm, majestic Bahamian sun, because, you know, our sun different from everybody else's sun, answering a few questions that people have for me, have asked me. It's in this little plastic bag. Give me 1 second. Trying to reach in and grab one as the plane flies overhead. Apparently planes used to be louder. Who knew? So, question. Oh, haha. This question is corn. It just says corn. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, it says corn. So, for persons who have been with us for a very long time, I keep bringing up corn. And I think, you know what? Let's have the conversation, right? When you hear the word corn, and it's one of those things that, from a linguistic standpoint, it aggravates me because, you know, when people say words mean things, and then you're like, yeah, words, of course words mean things. That's how we understand each other. But there's so much that can be lost when words lose their meaning. And it is, so corn is indicative of culture. And when I say that, what I mean is, all right, you have to stay with me. This is going to make sense. But it's a long walk, but it's going to make sense. Okay, so corn. What is corn? When you hear corn, you're probably thinking corn on the cob, the long thing where people bite and you make popcorn out of it, and you're like, no, that corn. That's what you think about, right? But here's the thing. That's not what the word corn initially meant, right? And it is only because of the strength of the culture of America that the meaning of corn in the English language has basically changed. So, corn is the primary grain of any region. That's all corn is, right? The primary grain of any region, which means that there's more than one type of corn. And I don't just mean sweet corn and non-sweet corn. Like literally, there are different things that you would think are not related, because they're not, that are designated as corn, because corn is the primary grain of a region. But what is a grain? The grain is the seed of a grass, right? It's the seed of a grass that people tend to eat, right? And so you're like, that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking? Well, so the corn that we're thinking of is maize, right? That one is the primary that's the primary grain of North America. That's the one that the Native Americans would have eaten, right? And so that makes sense. But rice is also a type of corn, because rice is a grain, because rice is a grass, and it's the seed, it's that piece that we're taking from it that we eat, right? Wheat is another type of grass, and we're using the seeds from that and we eat that, right? Oats is a corn, right? And what we're losing when we just oversimplify and say everything is this, and this is the dominant corn, and therefore slowly that becomes the only corn, we lose all this other stuff. Now, rice, we've not lost rice, but if you're old enough, you've heard in songs about Guinea corn, right? But what is Guinea corn? So in my grandparents' day, right, there were two corns that they would use. They call one Indian corn, what we call maize, right? Or what everybody calls corn now. That's the one that you see in the cartoons. That's the one you see on television all the time. The people holding corn in the cob eating that, right? But Guinea corn is sorghum, right? And this is a corn. It looks like little pebbles. It's similar to millet, which is also a corn, right? Guinea is what the coast of West Africa was called. So when they say Guinea corn, they're essentially saying African corn. At one point, the area of Fox Hill, I think it was called New Guinea or Guinea, right? But that was a long time ago. That's when they have the African liberated settlement was there. But you have Guinea corn and Indian corn. And these are two distinct plants. They serve two distinct purposes, but they function within society, right? We've lost that. If you ask somebody, what is Guinea corn? They don't know. If you ask somebody to prepare Guinea corn for you, they wouldn't know how to do it. If you ask them to identify it, they can't. This is a part of our history that is less than 100 years ago. This is less than 80 years ago. At some accounts, it might be 60-something years ago. This would have been something people would have been growing in their backyard, right? This is a source of sustenance that my grandparents would have used to keep them alive, because if you're living on the far-flung island of Auckland, right, the mailboat isn't coming every day. You couldn't just go to the store. Like, you would get supplies, but you also needed to supplement your diet with basic things like sweet potato and cassava. And we used to have more than one type of cassava. And we used to have more than one type of corn. And we used to know how to cook Guinea corn. But now we don't. And the thing is, in a world like today, where when the war in Ukraine first kicked off and there's a wheat shortage, we don't have access to their corn, which is wheat. And everything stops. Because where are we going to get the necessary calories and carbohydrates to carry on life? We've outsourced our corn to everybody else. If America were to stop selling us maize and corn. And they said, we need it to make ethanol, so there's no corn. How does that affect us? How does that affect our food supply? If the war in Ukraine takes a turn for the worse, for the left, I don't even know this direction, which direction it would take at this point. But if it takes a turn and we'd have zero access to their wheat, how does that affect our food supply? How does that affect us, right? And even if beyond that, if we never have to worry about the fact that we are now eating food that our ancestors didn't eat, so our bodies didn't adapt to eating these types of food that are overprocessed. Even if we could eliminate all that, even if all the wars in the world stop tomorrow and we have access to maize and wheat and rice, 3 corns that we eat every day that we don't grow in sufficient numbers within the country. 2 of them probably can't grow. Actually, you can grow rice in the Bahamas because you can grow rice inside portions of West Africa. There are different types of rice. But anyway, that's a different topic. But the whole point is, let's say all that is fine. We've still lost a part of our culture. And I know this because I know what corn is. But what about the things that I don't know? Because corn is just pointing to the fact that there are blind spots that we all will have where by the time you were born, corn stopped meaning the primary grain of a region. And so even when you read the Bible and it says Joseph was in Egypt and he told Pharaoh to store up the corn, that's not maize. They don't grow that in Africa. At least they didn't, right? They probably do now, but in Egypt, it was probably millet. Or maybe it was sorghum, guinea corn, right? Although that is northern Eastern Africa. Anyway, the whole point is we've lost something of ourself. We've lost a part of our identity. The fact that we are, there are things that we do and we don't know why we do it or how we got to that position. And there is a story there that is lost. And it's not even a matter of you need this story to survive, because human beings will figure a way to survive. But if you don't know that, that's a part of you that you're going to spend your entire life trying to figure out. You're going to try to fit into a hole. I remember when I was in high school, and I can't remember who it was. Some kid was like, you don't watch BET? And I was like, no. And I didn't watch BET because I didn't have cable. But she's like, oh, you don't watch BET? How you could be black and don't watch BET? Because in their mind, BET was the hub, the fount, the source of black culture. But that didn't make sense to me because I knew that my blackness in the Bahamas was a different type of blackness than the blackness that BET would portray. I wasn't an inner city youth in New York. Definitely wasn't an inner city youth in LA. Like, the blackness that is portrayed on television has nothing to do with me or who I am as a Bahamian. But if that's the only corn you know, then of course it is inevitable that you think that that is the corn that you should be. And you're trying to figure out why this recipe isn't working. It's because there's more than one type of corn. The corn is the primary grain of any region. And so that's the thing about corn. Anyway, next question. I should have started taking this out before I said that. All right, unraveling, and here we go. Being dramatic for the person. All right. If Jesus were here, would he be PLP or F&M? Great question. Great question. I don't know. This would be easier if the ideology of parties were clearer cut. This would also be easier if the version of Jesus that is within the text was not, I don't want to say muddied, but there's a version of Christ that exists in our heads, and there's a version of Christ that exists within the text, and then there's the historical Christ. We're not there, so we'll just have to we'll have to go with the first two and what we think of Christ. And honestly, it's a very difficult question because I do not think that he would be an ultra-conservative person. I don't think that he would be as concerned with some of the things that we find ourselves concerned with on a day-to-day basis. Matter of fact, the fact that the early church seemed very concerned about feeding the poor and taking care of the persons who society had forgotten about, like widows and orphans. Because, I mean, like, nobody really cared about them, right? The early church was concerned about that. And circumcision. Like, that seems to be their two main concerns. And yet I don't often hear that preached. Like, I hear a lot of, here's the secret knowledge. Here's the technicalities. If you read the scripture this way and that way. And a lot of preaching about the things that the majority of the population and the congregation are not. You hear a lot of that because those are the safe things, right? But you don't hear a lot of, hey, you feeding the poor, you taking care of the sick, you circumcised. The circumcision was a big thing. That like they finally, were like, oh, it's not necessary for Gentile believers. But in the early church, that was a big deal. Matter of fact, I think James did say circumcision. It was Paul who was not. I have to double check, so don't quote me on that. Anyway, but when you look at that, right, and these are people who would have experienced Jesus and would have walked with him and met him, aside from Paul, and they're like, this is what he would have wanted. This, if he were here walking around with us today, he would want these things. It would be fun and easy to be like, oh yeah, man, if Jesus was here, he'd vote PLP. If Jesus was here, he'd vote F&M. If Jesus was here, he'd vote COI. He wouldn't. But we must, sorry, let me not say that. I don't know. Anything's possible. I doubt it. But you'd have to look at what was it that Jesus cared about, and then look at whatever political party do you feel is most concerned about that. And that is incredibly difficult because sometimes you can't really tell what a political party's ideology is. It is difficult for some political parties to outright spell their ideology. But we have the benefit of, you don't have to listen to what people say. You just have to watch what they do.
Play for fun, not for funds.
In the Bahamas, we play hard,
but we live smart.
We love a little competition.
A little excitement, a little thrill.
And at Island Luck, gaming is all about entertainment.
Shared moments, celebrating the wins, and enjoying the experience.
The key is simple. Play for fun, not for funds.
When you set a budget before you start,
and know your limits, you stay in control.
And when you're in control, the game stays what it's meant to be.
Fun.
So play for fun, not for funds.
Must be 18 and over. Island Luck reminds you that it's only a game, so please game responsibly. Welcome to Paradise Premium Foods, where exceptional taste meets everyday convenience. Right in the heart of Hurricane Hole Plaza, whether you're planning a beachside brunch, an intimate dinner, or simply restocking your favorites, we offer only the finest selection of local and imported goods, handpicked for quality, freshness, and flavor. At Paradise Premium Foods, shopping is effortless, service is personal, and every visit feels like a treat. From gourmet meals to go to organic essentials and indulgent treats, this is your neighborhood market elevated. Live well, eat better. Discover Paradise Premium Foods, now open at Hurricane Hole Plaza, Paradise Island. Paradise Premium Foods. Taste the difference.
Welcome back to Sidebar, 103 to B podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. Today we're just going through some questions that people have asked me, and just have random things written down here. And so it would be helpful if I was not so long-winded. Hopefully this question isn't like, why you talk so long? Because that would hurt my feelings. All right, here we go. Why don't you make political videos anymore? I mean, don't I? I feel, and that I get that a lot. Why you don't make no videos no more? Oh, you gotta make videos for the government. For various reasons. For various reasons. As the trees fall apart behind me. I'm trying to think, what is the easiest and quickest one so this doesn't turn into an hour-long rant? Why don't I make, I mean, in a way, every video that you make is political. But if you reduce the idea of what is political solely to persons who have incorporated a political party and run during elections and have a uniform and a color shirt picked out, then of course it looks like I'm not making political videos. But in a way, every video that you make, every time you talk, everything that you do is political. There are people, their very existence is a act of defiance, rebellion. They are engaging with politics just by existing, right? Sometimes women just by, you wake up, you decide to go to work. Oh, there's the sun take a break for a second. You wake up, you go to work, you decide to wear a pantsuit. That's a political statement, whether or not you wish to agree it. Like, it may be a political statement where you fit in to your workplace. It may be a political statement where you stand out from your workplace, but either way, you're making a statement. You're engaging in the conversation, right? It could be as simple as that, but it also could be as complicated as, I make political statements, but I don't attack politicians, because that's two different things. And like, to what end? I want to think that I spent 10 years of my life directly seeing, hey, this specific politician should do or not do this thing. And as I've told all of them, I've retired from that. Because at the end of the day, you got to kind of look at who really is, you know, who is the, I don't know how to say this without, who is the boss? Who's running things? Who holds the power and the access, right? If I am to expend my power screaming and speaking truth to power, is the power really a legislator who has to go and sit at a table and beg a union leader to not do a certain thing and push the country in a certain way, when the union leader knows the state in which the country is in, knows the state of their union, knows the state of the average payment, knows the limitations? Is that really where we want to expend our power? Also, as a side note, sidebar, all right? A lot of people who complain about the way this government and any government deals with unions, It would be interesting to see how many of those persons have unions in their companies or want their employees to be a part of unions. Because sometimes, anyway, that's a different topic for a different day. It is easy to be like, let's throw a rock at the guy inside the three-piece suit. And you know what, in all fairness, hey, I ain't even mad at you, all right? It took me a long time to come to this conclusion. The guy in the three-piece suit is going to somebody else and saying, hey, you employ this many hundred people, this many thousand people, we need this. You sell this, and you are the biggest seller of this thing in the country. We need you to ease up off of this, or reduce this, or add this, or we need you to sell healthier food. We need you to not freak out about this gas thing, because like there's only so far we can go. We need you to, the shoes, the clothes, the basic necessities of life. The people who control those things, the people who own all the land, do some magical thing. Because like when you really think about it, how is it possible for individuals to own so much land in such a small country? That's a weird thing, is it not? Like, not to be a crazy, Christian person, but the earth is the Lord's, right? So, and even if you don't believe in God, nature has given us this land, right? So you have all this land. And if you look at an image of New Providence, and I encourage you, right? The majority of us live on the eastern side of the island. There are swaths, acres of land within New Providence that is uninhabited. And it's not just the coppice where there's forests and woodland. There's just areas that's uninhabited. And I'm not even talking about like the areas where it's swamp. I'm not talking about the areas where homes are undeveloped. These are properties that are owned by individuals or companies, and you're like, well, how did they get it? At what point in human history did they seize the land? And should not there be laws in place that say, hey, if you're not using the property, then you forfeit the property? There should be. And so for that, yes, you pressure the politicians, but you also have to pressure the people that own millions and millions of dollars worth of property, have no intention of using it, will sit on it because they are rich enough to sit on it, while you have access to nothing. That is the political videos that I am making. Those are the people that we need to speak directly to. That is the power that we should be questioning and challenging. But I will say that challenging those powers is substantially more dangerous than challenging political, like regular politicians. Like you could call a politician out their name. You could say all type of things with them. You say, oh, he's a big sissy. Oh, he's a thief. He's a dog. He's a scoundrel. He's cheated on his wife. He don't know how to cook grits. You could say anything about a politician. The majority of them will swallow it because they know it's not worth the hassle. This person is speaking out of anger and they'll just let it go. But you hurt some rich people's feelings and they will make sure that you end up in the coldest, darkest, wettest, dirtiest cell possible under whatever charges they could figure out. If even that, they could also just freeze you out of life. Could you imagine a world where all the people who own all the businesses decide that they don't want you to work for them? Where are you going to work? Because once again, you're a worker, you're a laborer. You're not a capitalist. The things that you own, your personal property, don't make money for you. Not without your assistance. They don't just sit there and make money. So you have to go work someplace. And so that is this psychic hold that they have over us where you're like, okay, I know that the person that I work for at this warehouse, at this conglomeration, whatever, right? I know that what they're doing is wrong. I know that they are breaking laws. But if I say anything, if I report it, there's a chance that it comes back to me and I will never have a job again. That's insidious. That's scary. That's terrifying. Those are the things that I seek to address. So yeah, I don't make little funny political videos anymore and saying this person didn't cut the grass or this person didn't do an auditorium, which in fairness, they really should. I mean, as a side note, as a sidebar, I promise this is the last one. We really need to figure out what it is that we want our politicians to be so that we can actually hold them to that. Are they community leaders? Are they legislators? And I know that some of them have spoiled us by being both. But because they have no true obligation to be either, for every good politician that does both and is both a community leader and a legislator, there's also one, or maybe sometimes two, that does neither, because there is no standard to hold them to and for and with. And so we will need to figure that out, particularly as we creep closer and closer into election season. And okay, if I could leave you with one last thing, and I promise, this is it. This is it. We're running out of time. So this is the very last thing I'd like to leave you with. It's not a question. It is a statement. If I were to make one directly political plea and cry, it is, for the love of God, do not vote with or from emotion. I need you to devoid yourself of all emotion. And that is emotion, whether it is anger, whether it is love, whether it's excitement, whether you must not vote with emotion. I need everyone to sit down with themselves and do, I know in a TikTok world is difficult. Right now, most of you are probably listening to this while you're doing work because it is difficult to just do one thing for a moment. But I need you to sit down with yourself in your head. Maybe even get somebody. Say, hey, let's make a list of the good and the bad. Let's make a list of the options. Let's figure out what exactly are we doing. Do we have a good thing? Do we not have a good thing? Do we need to change something? Do we need to fix something? Can it be adjusted within the system? Do we need to start over? What exactly? Do not vote with emotion. The angrier somebody gets you, the less control that you have, the more power you've given over to them. The more excited someone gets you, the less control, the more power you've given over to them. So if I were to leave you with just one thing, please, for the love of all that is good and holy and righteous, do not vote with any emotion. I need you to be devoid of emotion. The day after, by all means, throw a party, don't throw a party, whatever. But on the day of, as sober-minded as possible. That is it. We're out of time. You have been watching and listening to Sidebar, 103 The Beat podcast, powered by ILTV. I'm Stephen Hanna. True God still.
So you want a space. But not just any space. You need something with a little more potential. So how about 1,000 square feet of room to play with? Superb audio and video production capability, digital LED wall, full lighting grid, and about 124 seats to accommodate a full studio audience with so many other features. Make us your home for your next concert, conference, and so much more. Honestly, the possibilities are endless. Here at ILTV Studios, we'd love to bring your next event to life. So what do you say? Do you want our space?